everyone, welcome back to another Age of Empires 4 commentary. I am Beyond, and today we have a special one for you. We have a co-caster introducing Tim. He's been on the channel once or twice before, but say hi, Tim.
Hey everyone, pleasure to be here, and Beyond let me out of his basement to cast once more with you fine people. Beyond, who is Leenock playing against?
Today we have Leenock. He's playing as the English, rocking the red, the sailboat as a classic, and across the way he is playing against 3dqt. From the 3D clan. They always do something a little bit spicy in their gameplay. They're a little bit more unique, a little bit more aggressive, and they're playing as the Blue Abbasid today.
Yeah, Cat is actually a really good player. This is somebody that I started to be familiar with during the Elite Classic, if you guys remember, all the way back a few months ago in May. Cat was one of those lucky 16 that ended up being there. So he got a nice little invitation into the 3D clan, working very astutely on his game, and he's continuing to throughout now our tournament that we're going into now, which is the Call to Arms. So look out for some Cat games, look out for some Leenock games as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the Call to Arms, and that's what this game is from. It's from the group stages. It's also on this weekend, next weekend, the weekend after that. So tune in to EGC TV at Twitch. I will leave their link in the description below, as well as Leenock's links. And I believe Cat might stream. I'm not 100% sure, but I will go and make sure if he does have a link to leave it in the description below as well. In this matchup, Tim, what do you like? And I like the English in this matchup, but you have to get some damage done because the Abbasid can just keep on booming away.
Yeah, I really like how early English can provide some kind of aggressive factor. Right. I mean, as we're coming up on the 2 minutes, Leenock going to be getting up to that feudal age resource mark that we're looking for. Maybe we'll see a council hall where you can pump out some longbowmen. You get a group of 4 or 5 of them, and they just really annoy. It's a death by 1,000 paper cuts, and I guess it's arrows at this point for 3dqt to deal with, because he's probably going to be looking to do some kind of economic boom, and that's what the Abbasid are really good at. They have a lot of different things for their civilization in terms of increasing gathering rate with their golden age, fresh foodstuffs, eliminating some of the cost of villagers, where booming is very valuable to them. And if they can pull it off in feudal age and not die, they're in such a good spot.
And as I zoom in, totally agree, as I zoom in on the old eco wing, so this game is going to be going for at least 20 minutes if 3dqt can survive and has something to say about it. An absolute plethora of sheep on the way back home to get collected and make some delicious dinner for the Abbasid player. Now the eco wing, when Leenock scouts this, which he's about to scout this right now, remember you can tell just by what the shape of the building is. The econ wing is that little bulb. It looks kind of like a little seed. The military wing is a little crown, so think of it like that. The culture wing is just a giant tower. And then the trade wing is just like a little, I don't even know, just like a little indent, like a little like outdent from the actual thing. But econ wing in the council hall, so we might see a little bit of cheekiness from Leenock early on with those early longbows, but I wouldn't be surprised if he sees this and starts to go for a second TC.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave a little bit of a description on what the wings look like. I always thought the economic wing was more of a phallic structure than anything else, but otherwise, it will be done in about 25 seconds. Got to remember, for the Abbasid dynasty, it's 1:45 to go up to feudal, whether you like it or not. You can't have excess villagers trying to build that thing, as Leenock had 3 villagers on the council hall, went ahead and moved it up to 4, and will be able to get his first longbowman out as soon as that council hall finishes construction. And honestly, Beyond, pretty good time for him. That's like 4 minutes flat.
Yeah, I liked how you noticed that he added the extra 1 on there. It does make that little bit of a difference to get you out those early archers. Now, Leenock definitely is scouting that wing, so he knows he's not going to have to contend with those early military units from the Abbasid. Of course, they go military wing, 2 archers and 2 spearmen pop out almost immediately, but a normal response that almost every English player sees every single game. The opposing member gets a stable early on to do some early damage with those horsemen, and you do not want those longbowmen out in the middle of the map like this guy is, stranded alone, and a horseman pops out.
And, you know, I wanted to take a look because Cat put a stable down. That was the first thing he spent with his wood, which obviously, because of those longbowmen, you're exactly right. Horseman gets caught, longbowman, one of the slowest land units in the game. You really can't be out of position because it's difficult for them to recover. But taking a look at Cat's map, because he went economic wing, in the feudal age. So he's looking about getting extra town centers. Both of his stone deposits are in very difficult places to do that just completely naked. And I'm glad he didn't do it naked because we probably couldn't show it on YouTube. It would break terms of service. So now he goes with the stable. He gets the horsemen and now pulls villagers over to try to get that second town center going. So he needed that little bit of defense. And because of the map, delays it just that little bit.
Absolutely, and as we saw a little bit fake out there, he realized he needed a whole lot more wood before he started to go out there. And a good actually scout by both players. So Leenock scouted that he wasn't going to be doing too much. He saw the early stable, so instantly pulled back that one longbowman. And then on top of that, 3dcat did not invest too much either. Normally, if they just see English, players just kind of spam too many units. So kind of good, well disciplined by both sides. And we can also see that Leenock saw what he saw. He decides he's also going to go for a second TC.
Yeah, this shows how important it is for your greed to actually pay off for both of these civilizations, right? They want to do the minimum amount possible in terms of making units to get their economic boom going, right? So Cat, he made a stable, he made 2 horsemen, probably not going to make any more because those couple horsemen are going to be enough for him to not only, he could provide defense on his side for the stone outcropping. To me, that's more like playing not to lose. Cat's playing to win. He sends those horsemen up there to try to cause some disruption from Leenock trying to get that second town center going, because if you look at the resources on the top left and the top right, Leenock is ahead in that category to start building that town center first.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a loner out here, just doing a little bit of damage. I think he took the long way around and is going to be getting some cheeky damage over here. What I also wanted to mention too is, yes, it's unfortunate in terms of where the stone placement was for Cat, but look at how much gold is in pretty relative ease from him. Like one keep or a wall could just secure himself 3 different veins, berries, and a deer, and another stone in a very small corridor for him.
Yeah, I was kind of curious if Cat was going to put a second town center there. You know, I mean, that would have been a super greedy play where the risk of it is really high, but it could pay off. Instead, Cat going for a little bit more of a safer approach, going for more of a northwest, whereas Leenock is going more on the eastern side. And the English player, even though you're playing English and those farms are really good, you got to work your wood economy to the point where you can make farms. So doing this deer is a nice little buffer zone where he's able to do that and still have a good food income.
Exactly, and it secures him another gold as well. I'm sure he also saw the crazy lineup that Cat had over here, so knows that he needs to get another TC. So you were half correct because they didn't throw down the second TC over there, but the third TC is being. Just kidding, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
I was just about to say, I'd rather be lucky than good, but it turns out I am neither. And Cat's third town center is actually going to be near that gold and near that berry bush. And the one thing that I really want to take a look at is the way Cat puts his town center, where it's a little bit more in front of the resource nodes. And that's something really, really important, because if you're struggling against the English with the longbowmen that have such a wide range, they have to come into harm's way to do that. And you're seeing 4 spearmen do that. Cat doing the good thing, pulling some of those villagers out of the way. Spearmen, not much of a DPS unit, if anything. But those longbowmen have to shoot over the town center to actually do damage. One villager ends up going down, so that will be the cost. Now, beyond, think about if that town center was in that greedy spot, like we said. He could have had more casualties.
Absolutely. He almost actually might have had to cancel it. That's actually maybe why he moved it back. He saw this kind of army moving out. And if you only have 2 horsemen into 4, 5 spearmen and a few longbowmen, it's not going to go super well for you. But Cat's happy to trade that one villager for a third TC, because all of a sudden the Avacid player is going to be absolutely booming in terms of villagers quite soon. We can see it's a little bit even. One of the only, though, the good news about playing as the English, if Leenock now wants to go for a little bit of a faster castle than maybe Cat would be going for, he can, of course, drop down King's Palace and get himself a third TC built-in Castle Age.
Absolutely, and that's exactly why Cat made the third town center, right? It's just because he knows he's going to have to catch up to that English 3 TC. And now we're seeing how English and Abbasid usually plays out. Leenock tried to get a little bit of early aggression. He did get 1 or 2 vills, which was beneficial, but both of them went back to their respective corners, got their little drink of water, dried off a little bit. They were getting sweaty in the beginning. And now They're going to sit and just kind of relax a little bit. Be like, hey, this becomes now a 20-minute no rush game.
Yep. I mean, I would be absolutely shocked if we saw anyone lose in the next 10 minutes, but that's also great. It's also great in the sense that, one, we get to talk about how all the unique kind of in-between things in this matchup, and then on top of that, it means it's going to be some banger of a fight. There's going to be some large armies clashing very, very soon. Could be some men-at-arms being sprinkled in here for Leenock. Those men-at-arms, especially Castle Age with those upgrades. Those English men-at-arms are a top 3 men-at-arms in the game once they get all those upgrades. The Ghulams are decent, but I don't know if they're as good. But then, of course, the Abbasid Archers getting that classic composite bows upgrade, 33% attack speed, absolutely nuts.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing that you can say beyond to overestimate the composite bow. That 33% difference. Those archers shoot like machine guns. We talk about the English starting town center having a machine gun. Think if you could walk around with it.
It's absolutely crazy. And there we go. The forward tower. All you English players out there, remember, I forget this all the time as well. Please make sure you drop that forward tower / outpost when you're going to be attacking. If you do not, your attack will be not nearly as effective. It spreads that network of castles to you. It gives you a nice place to retreat to and a safe place to build your rams as well.
You know, this is really interesting because I just talked about this being perhaps a 20-minute no rush game. Leenock is completely doing the opposite and going more in Feudal Age, getting that forward outpost, and then the mill going to be able to hijack some of those berries. But using the men-at-arms, that is something that the Abbasid dynasty in Feudal Age really struggle with. You know, they don't have that armor piercing besides something like a camel archer, which is quite expensive to make. It's 240 resources total. So they need a decent amount of those to actually one-tap men-at-arms, which is that sweet spot, that critical mass that you need. So he's going up to Castle Age as a result and going with the military wing. I'm not really sure if Leenock is going to be able to produce enough military units to make an impact before that military wing comes in. And I don't know if Leenock's scouting that he is going to Castle, although with the amount of villagers that the Abbasid has on gold, might be a decent marker for you.
Absolutely. And of course, as we mentioned earlier in the game, this is when this Abbasid kind of build time kind of comes into play. Any other civilization would be Castle Age at this point, but Abbasid have to sit and patiently wait, which might give Leenock enough time to take down this forward town center. Ooh, the builders are getting pulled. Nope, just kidding. They're a little bit of a fake out there. They see a squadron of men-at-arms coming their way, and they are out of here. The men-at-arms will provide a nice front line, essentially, and they're actually getting a ton of villager kills because there's not enough room in that forward town center, and they're absolutely cooking. These archers do not have that composite bows just yet, so Leenock will get what he comes for. That third TC is going to be going down.
Yeah, and this is what Leenock that was really his goal. He wants to punish a little bit of the greediness, and he does by eliminating that town center. So Cat isn't going to have that really high villager lead that you see later in the game before Leenock goes to Castle. So honestly, this feudal aggression by him, he's doing very well, but Cat is doing the right thing in terms of military choice because he's adding now Abbasid Lancers, which you might not see too much out of the Abbasid dynasty, but a really good unit, especially when dealing with a feudal age mass that's comprised of predominantly longbowmen and men-at-arms. Now Leenock's adding a couple spearmen to try to take out these Lancers too.
Yeah, and this is a great timing here from Leenock as well. He's getting in there before the Castle Age upgrades this archer mass, and it's before composite bows come into play. So Leenock knows that he has a sweet spot to really do a lot of economic damage. That's exactly what he came here to do. He wanted to trim down this archer mass before they got into that insane kind of mass. Once they get into that 30, 40, 50 kind of count, it gets absolutely impossible without a mangonel to kind of deal with them. And then on top of that, he also gets that front town center so he can actually keep up. And he knows full well that when he goes Castle Age, which he's saving up for, he's actually going to have the TC lead after this.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm glad you pointed out because I was going to point towards the attention of the audience as well. Leenock made just enough units to do that damage while being able to conserve some of his resources. As you can see the build order, or I should say the macro that he's doing now that we're later into the game. Almost 40 vills on food, 15 on gold, so he's going to be trying to get to that 600 as fast as humanly possible because he knows the longer he sits in feudal, the longer it gives Cat time to rebound.
Yeah, and I love this. He's not just throwing away this army, right? So he's kind of making sure they go back into the tower network of castles. He's doing lots and lots of damage to this archer mass, knowing full well that if he trades this out now, it's going to be advantageous for him. You don't want to lose it for absolutely nothing, which I think a lot of people do, including myself, all the time. You lose that army trying to die the TCs. You're trying to make the most of your Rams, but your Rams got what they came here for. They got what they came here for, and now doing this much damage to this archer ball. It's only 15 archers, which is not nearly enough to do much damage to the English base, and we see that Leenock is fully walled off. He's chilling.
Yeah, because Leenock is one of those players, like a lot of the top players, like Cat himself, who they're playing chess while all y'all play checkers. You know, he knows that feudal aggression isn't going to win him the game. It's just going to hinder Cat's economic prowess just a little bit out of the Abbasid dynasty, which is something that you really want. He knows that if he doesn't continue to produce units, he's not going to be able to sustain that aggression. So yeah, a lot of his units died. Military count 22 to 12 in favor of Cat. But usually for the Abbasid dynasty and Castle Age, one of the big reasons they can power spike is because they could do a counterattack. Leenock putting those walls down, making sure that they need the password in order to get to that English base.
Absolutely, and another smart play over here from Cat, setting up that outpost and only sending out just the perfect amount of units that can actually go into the tower and be safe and sound. But this idle time is pretty big. The Abbasid will always need those outside food resources until they can finally go for a farm transition. So if you do want to hit an Abbasid where it hurts, make sure you scout out where the berries, the boars are around the map, especially in this like 10 to 20 minute mark. That's the sweet spot when they're going to have to finally start to go outside of their base to kind of get the food they actually need to produce out of these TCs. That's where you can do some real damage.
Yeah, but this is one of the things that shows great game sense from Leenock, and he knows that. He doesn't necessarily know that there are Abbasid villagers in picking at those berries, but he can infer, right? So he might not necessarily have the scouting knowledge, but he's like, hey, I know Abbasid likes berries, so I'm just going to pull a couple men-at-arms, check and see if there's over there. And a lot of times when you do that, just like you said, you end up paying off. That's a lot of idle time for some of those villagers.
Yeah, and now the English is fully walled off, and the worst thing in the world is when English longbowmen walk up and shoot you from over the safety of a wall, which they're doing right now, and that's just infinite value for Leenock at this point. He can just shoot over this wall, do a little bit of damage here and there. He can take out these lancers, even with just longbowmen. Now, this archer mass is getting pretty large for Cat, 30 at this current moment. But if he just keeps hitting here, he is just going to take a lot of chip damage for free. I mean, I will say these lancers absolutely eat up this longbowman.
Yeah, but the one thing, I mean, those Abbasid archers really ate up that wall. Just because of the fact that they have composite bows. I don't know if they get a third limb with those composite bows. I'm not really sure what's going on. But beyond, we got a big fight over here near the King's Palace. I think Cat might need to back up.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, though, Cat is backing up a little bit just because these men-at-arms are so strong. They have 8 ranged armor, and there's only 9 on the other side. So these archers are doing, even though they're shooting like machine guns, they're only doing 1 damage a pop. And fighting under the English TC with men-at-arms as the front line is never going to end in a good thing. And we even have crossbowmen involved in here as well. And they're all running from this absolute madman of a unit known as the men-at-arms, who just sprints. Oh, he might want to turn around, though. This little cluster will get attacked quite soon if they keep going. Actually, he's just going to say, he's saying, screw it, I'm going all the way. It doesn't even matter. Now he's finally pulling back.
Yeah, I mean, Leenock is doing such a good job in terms of his micro and his macro. He knows what resources he needs with these men-at-arms, and you can see just based on the food per minute, gold per minute, wood per minute, what he actually needs to continually sustain men-at-arms production. Cat actually making a switch, and it almost looks like he's bottlenecked on food just a little bit because he has those archers which have their composite bows, which is all well and good. You're only doing 1 damage to men-at-arms. The longbowmen are out of your reach. So what does he do? He's going to be adding some crossbowmen because those lancers are very expensive. They're 240 resources each at a time when Cat, if he had that third town center, might have been able to sustain those as we're getting into our 20-minute, but decided to make crossbowmen also to deal a little bit of DPS for that matter against the men-at-arms because Leenock is pumping those boys out. He already has 35.
Yeah, and you can see this is exactly why Leenock went for that front TC. He just knew he needed a little bit of damage so he could take the actual lead against the Abbasid player. You don't see that very often, especially as an English player, so this is very well played by Leenock. I will say, Cat's doing a good job, scooping up some relics, is already getting number 2 on the way, so playing a pretty clean game himself, but this is when these men-at-arms are going to be super, super annoying. They can start to one-shot villagers as they run by, and nothing damages them. They can just come over here and cause absolute havoc. Yes, these Lancers will come over here, but as you mentioned before, Lancers are much more expensive than these men-at-arms, and the English men-at-arms cost gold and food. That's one thing that the English produce so much of. It's so easy for them to produce them, and with all this armor, they're able to trade into almost anything positively, and that very poor Imam is going to face the absolute beatdown of a lifetime. Goes down pretty dramatically, if I will say so myself, Tim. Kind of sold that one a little bit too hard.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about calling it a flop, but he did die after that. So maybe it was a heavy casualty. Now, 3dqt, you could see his ranged mass and how important it is. We had a little bit of foreshadowing now from early Feudal Age when we talked about the longbowmen getting out of position. Right now they're stuck. They can't really get out of there. They're not like horsemen with a lot of mobility. So now all those longbowmen get cleaned up. Military count 71 to 48. I think Cat really knows that he did a good dent. Now he has a keep for a defensive structure. That gives something that he would love to fight under. That's one of those real good DPS outputs in Castle Age, where even though those men-at-arms have a lot of armor, they can still get affected by a keep.
Absolutely, and it looks like Leenock, you know, what we were saying earlier is that Cat has this little alley of gold that was going to be easily defendable by a keep, and I mean, there's a keep, voila. But it looks like Leenock also saw that and knew that he needed to get some of the gold himself, so drops a keep mid-map. Even though if he's going to have to retreat after this eventually, even if he gets pushed back, he's still collecting tons and tons of gold from his gold vein before he gets inevitably kicked back by the Abbasid player. But we can see that this range match for the Abbasid is no joke. Has about 65 strong between archers and crossbowmen. These villagers gotta get inside. Y'all better run. There we go. Get inside with all the gold. And this is a huge rain match. If we had one mango for Leenock, it could be very juicy. But Leenock's going for a counter raid.
Yeah, instead of going for that center, I mean, yeah, the keep is there. It's a difficult thing to actually push through. He's going to go for that keep that's not yet constructed yet, and it's a pretty lucky timing for his sake. Cat should have strengthened those defenses probably a little bit sooner just because of how many men-at-arms were there trying to attack, but Leenock coming in from all different angles. The tendrils of the Lenoctopus starting to make different pseudopods into different areas, and over here on the east side, those spearmen are going to find some villagers who only have berries, and I'm not even sure beyond, do those villagers from the Abbasid have textiles?
I don't. Hold on, they're all dead. I don't. They might.
Yeah, so they do have the plus 25, so
Yeah,
they
they
do have textiles. But how many spearmen were over there? Probably a change of clothes ain't gonna help. A mangonel shot from those.
Clean this one up pretty quickly, but because this range match is absolutely insane. But oh my god, there's just so much going on.
Yeah, I mean, we're just seeing Leenock at his finest. His APM coming from StarCraft, his APM is off the charts, and he actually has been putting Cat under constant duress in Castle Age, which is supposed to be English's quote-unquote weakest age. And instead, going up with the Wingguard Palace in Imperial Age, something that Cat is nowhere near.
Well, if we didn't have a thumbnail before, now we do. Where is that beauty? So I can... There she is, the Wingguard Palace, looking in all of her glory. The first one popping out is the Wingguard army. Of course, getting some trebuchets to knock down that front keep over here. And then if we, hopefully we'll see some Wingguard Rangers into the mix as well, which will absolutely cook whatever is in front of them. This Mangonel, though, is going to play a pivotal role, but these men-at-arms can really get on top of there. And there it is, one of the most insane upgrades of all time is enclosures, which is essentially free gold for the English with what they already do naturally, which is build farms.
Yeah, I think English has two of the most broken technologies. One being, like you just said, enclosures. The second coming from that keep that Leenock already had in Castle Age, which is network of citadels. Instead of, he does not have that yet. Oh, excuse me. So increasing that network castle attack speed bonus from 20 to 40% if you're an English player and beyond. I know that you are. Network of citadels is something that you love to click.
Absolutely. And Leenock is just, it's just making this range mass, while it's scary as the opposite player, it's not so scary if it's running across your base every 5 seconds. They're not getting any damage done, and this mangonel is trying its absolute best to do something, but Leenock has killed 14 villagers, but the amount of idle time that he has caused is another level at this point. We have even more spearmen over here, and these are Castle Age spearmen, so they're not going to go down too easily, even with the surround from here. We even have a ram kind of hanging out involved, and this is causing so much issues, and we can see more and more rams just coming out everywhere. And Leenock's just spreading Cat just super thin. 20 villagers have gone down in this exchange, and the armies actually haven't even fought yet.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of an indecisiveness from Cat on this keep to the south. I mean, there were a little bit of men-at-arms and there were some longbowmen, but I think if the villagers toughed it out a little bit, they might have got that keep up a little bit quicker, maybe with less casualties. But you're exactly right, looking at the worker kill count and the fact that Cat is now, it has been continuously down at town center. You see economic count 147 to 111. And my question for you beyond is, when is that real death punch from English gonna hit? Because they're doing a lot of raiding, they're doing a lot of being a nuisance. Now they just need that haymaker to close the deal.
I think the haymaker is Imperial men-at-arms with 10 ranged armor and 8 melee armor. I think that might be the last Leenock kind of knife in the back. And if he keeps up all these raids constantly, it's going to drive Cat absolutely crazy, because while he does have a sizable force over here, it doesn't matter because everything over here is getting attacked, and he can't have that front line in here, which is causing a lot of damage. We do see the rams finally coming out, a lonely trebuchet, and that mangonel is getting some damage over here. But honestly, at this point, Leenock might actually be very content with losing some of these villagers.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, he was at like 147 before. I mean, honestly, gold's a good resource, but you have enclosures, so you're kind of okay with it. For Cat right now being in Castle Age, he just went up with the trade wing. Doesn't necessarily have the map control to have the trade wing, but it feels like if he wasn't making units, he was always behind in this one. So it kind of felt like he was going to be perpetually in Castle Age, because you can't afford to stop making units and your economy is under constant duress. So now that he has, you can see the queue from the top left compared to the top right of Leenock, because he's already Imperial. He's got all those techs, baby. So he's just going to flood units with all of those English farms that are in the back. Cat hasn't been able to get his feet under him to the point where he can constantly stream units.
And look at this army switch up into what is over here. This is going to clean this up. Horsemen, Imperial Horsemen for English are the strongest switch up if both players are not doing like the best in terms of resources, because Cat has so much gold, he doesn't even know what to do with it at this point. But these are so value for money, and all they need is food and wood, something that Leenock has plenty of, so he can produce tons of them. They're mobile, they're quick, and they do a lot of damage, especially with that Imperial upgrade. And they have 7 ranged armor. So, and especially if your opponent has been dealing with men-at-arms this whole time, they're going to have a real tough time dealing with this. Even the mangonel doesn't even do that good into them. So this is a great switch up from Leenock.
Yeah, this is one of those things that the English player can really do in a sneaky way. Because of the fact that they wall up and they turtle inside their own base, it's very difficult to scout later in the game. Cat might not even have known that Leenock had stables in the first place, because the only thing he was making was longbows and men-at-arms. So he sees that horde of horsemen, he's like, wow, like the quote-unquote trash units certainly do not belong in the garbage, as those ranged units, those crossbows archers are like, they're just getting mopped.
Absolutely. I mean, this has just been an absolute masterclass from Leenock. Death by 1,000 cuts is what happened here today, and Leenock played every advantage perfectly. I don't want to call it early, but I would be absolutely shocked if Leenock can't pull this one out.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult because Cat needs to get upgrades. He needs to constantly make units. He's going into hand cannoneers, which is quite the expensive unit, not something that he might necessarily be able to do. He's going to have to use a market to take some of that gold away. His macro has been suffering just because of the constant raids and all different resource nodes that you've seen throughout this game. 26 food, even though he's making 1,300 a minute. You could tell he's bottlenecking there.
Absolutely, and this is exactly what you do not want to see against an English player late game. Your wall is broken open, and then you just see the red dots moving across all the way through, streaming through. That means men-at-arms are just running into your base, and there's going to be rams and horsemen alike. And this is going to only end worse and worse, especially once this goes down. All that free gold will be going down as well, and here come the rams.
Yeah, and those rams, I mean, look at Cat's military units right now. He's at 5. Everything got mopped up. So in terms of taking the time to remass and make units, that's not going to happen either, because Leenock has 56 barreling down the middle of this map. He's not going to have time to remass.
No, absolutely not. And there's 12 horsemen in production, and he's pop capped. So at this point, Leenock is just ready to click for even more units and using that Wingard Palace to actually get those cheap trebuchets. So it's actually kind of a nice. I do like that switch up. I don't think it's necessarily better than the Berkshire Palace in many ways. In many ways, I don't think it is at all. But in this case, to get those cheap trebuchets and you really have the tempo advantage, I can see why it's pretty valuable in that situation.
Yeah, the Wingard Palace is really nostalgic for me. For some of those early seasons, the Wingard Palace was a must build because of how much of a powerhouse English was in that post-Imperial era. Now with the Berkshire Palace, it almost feels like an exclamation point on some games, and just because the fact that you can fire arrows from another dimension makes people want to build it.
It is really cool. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those in-game units. You're like, that's cool. That's really cool how it does that. If you're against it, it's really annoying. But if you build it yourself, it's a very, very cool thing. We do have the upgrades to the longbowmen, so they're shooting fire arrows. Tim, not quite sure where they get the fire though. Where do you think they store that?
Well, I mean, they must have some incredibly smelly farts to be able to make longbowmen shoot those fiery arrows, because there's only one way to light it, and the fact that you don't have a lot of wood as a resource in your bank, probably don't have a lot of kindling to make fire out of.
I mean, absolutely, and this is absolutely crazy. There's like 9 red dots going constantly. It's just a classic Leenock game. I'm so happy he is back and getting to watch him play on the big stage. So definitely go check out this tournament. It's going to be happening, when am I going to upload this? Probably Sunday, so it's going to be happening this afternoon after I drop this video. It's going to be happening the following weekend, and hopefully Leenock lasts a lot longer, and so does Cat. Both are such great players, and it's been an absolute blast to watch.
Yeah, Cat really did a good job holding his own on this one, but I'm telling you, there's 8 tentacles on an octopus, and we saw pretty much all 8 of them get used at the same exact time. Classic Leenock.
It's insane, and I will say, for everyone wondering why maybe Cat isn't GGing out of this one just yet, this is a tournament game, so they're going to try their absolute hardest to win no matter what the cost. And honestly, these are also 5-game sets in the group stage, so there is also time to utilize this as like a way to get ready and kind of get your mind in the right mindset for the next game. Really think about like what could have went right, what could have went wrong. So if we're kind of talking like it's over, because it is kind of over, but this is why they're kind of sticking around a little bit longer, especially in these tournament style games.
Yeah, and the population difference really sets it. You know, Leenock is continuing to be at 200, has the production to keep making. He just queued up 11 horsemen like it was nothing. He just queued up 10 men-at-arms and 8 hand cannoneers like it was nothing, and still had 7,000 food in the bank to spare. Whereas Cat, devoid of both wood and gold, there's a massive red blob of units that you're highlighting. As far as Cat, there isn't really much of a blobbiness going on. There's just that little bit of hand cannoneers, but when they get wiped up, what are you going to do? I mean, his population's at a little bit under 120 and no sign of pop capping anytime soon.
Right, and I mean, Cat just can't get anything going. He has set up trade, but at this point, Leenock can just kind of attack that if he really wants to. But what Leenock is trying to do is he's trying to get on this. He wants this to die, and then that's the only downside in the Abbasid late game. You only have to kill 2 buildings. While that being said, this thing is a monster. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. 17,000 health. But all you have to do, if you kill that thing, it is all over. And now we have elite horsemen in the trade line, which is never a good thing.
No, they'll be able to take up those traders really quickly, and this could be something for Leenock in terms of a lesson to close things out. You know, he's building rams to try to take down the House of Wisdom, but maybe it's not a lesson because Cat decides to finally tap out, doesn't see a way to win this game. Game goes to Leenock.
GG's. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining the channel. We'll definitely have you back a lot more in the future. It's always a pleasure to cast with you. Guys, if you did enjoy the video, please do drop a like and subscribe. Tim does not have any socials that I can link in the description, but I can promise you that he'll be back, and sometimes he appears on my stream as well. So if you like Tim, he's also sometimes on EGC TV. So if you like Tim, come check it out. He's also appears on many other streamers' streams. So come check out pretty much everyone in the community, and we'll have a great time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Beyond AoE. He paid me to say that.
Thanks, Tim. See you guys.